Welcome to The Owl Hoot, a podcast for the environmentally curious, with me, Caroline Norbury. On each episode, I chat with a guest who contributes in some way to protecting the planet on matters of climate change, sustainability, biodiversity and pollution. Here is a place where you can gain new knowledge and be inspired. Enjoy listening. Today I am talking trees with Sabaha Hussein, a recent project assistant with the Woodland Trust. Following achievement of Science A-levels, she has used her gap year to complete a UK year of service through the National Citizen Service Trust. She has worked at the Young People's Forest at Mead in Derbyshire, a Woodland Trust site which has previously been a coal mine. Tree planting has been at the heart of its transformation with the help of local people. I am keen to hear about the activities at Mead and Sabaha's experiences working with the Woodland Trust. So it is my absolute pleasure to welcome her to the podcast.
Hi.
So I'm going to start by saying and asking you, Sabaha, about your childhood and what that looked like in terms of, were you connected with nature in any way? Did you go to parks? Did you appreciate the environment outside of your home?
I did enjoy, I used to love playing in my back garden. It was probably my favorite thing to do. And in that sense, I did really like being outside. I guess I was quite playful as a child. But in the terms of like getting out in nature, I wouldn't say I got much exposure to that as a child, like being in the middle of a city.
Okay. And so I know you've done a fair bit of volunteering, considering the age that you are, still quite young. You'd already had some contact with the Woodland Trust before this placement. How did you get involved with them the first time round?
So the first time round, I was actually a friend sent me a poster about the youth forum, just in the terms of like work experience, because I want to go into the environment and conservation. So in that sense, I was really excited to become part of something that was quite extracurricular and different, and obviously so like in depth with the environment, and I was so into it, but obviously I hadn't had that chance before. So I became a volunteer as well as the youth forum member, which is like encompasses everything. So the youth forum obviously is more about the future of the forest, whereas being a volunteer was more doing the practical things like planting trees and doing more things on site. So yeah, I loved it.
Okay, and you said that you gave me the impression there that you were already thinking that you wanted to be involved in something environmental in the future. How did that
Yeah.
come about? How did you decide upon that path?
So I've always loved nature in that sense of like growing up. I quite like gardening. And in school, college, I quite liked biology and the sciences. So when I quite liked zoology, like the idea of zoology when I was in like year 10, year 11. And I thought that might be the degree I would like to take because I want to work with animals in the future, like that kind of area. But then in college, when I did biology and I learned even more in depth about it, I was like, yeah, zoology is definitely the way I want to go. And obviously that is conservation because I'd like to go into wildlife rehabilitation. So although the work I did at the Woodland Trust isn't like entirely the wildlife part of it, it's still very much conservation and about the environment and helping the world be a better place.
So you did your A-levels. At what point did you think I'm going to do a gap year, and how did it work with getting involved with the NCS organisation?
So obviously, the COVID pandemic and how crazy that all was, and trying to do A levels through that, and the way it all turned online, and we didn't know the confusion between, we didn't know how exams were going to go through, and we didn't know how universities are going to do their placements, not the placements, sorry, like how the conditions are going to work, and originally before the pandemic I quite wanted to do a gap year just to do like traveling, getting some work experience, because I thought if I know how hard it is after university for people to get work experience, so if I could take that year in between to gain some that I could actually use after university, that would be amazing, that would be ideal. So I actually went back and forth with wanting a gap year, I actually applied for university to do it, to actually go last year. But then when it came to, and this opportunity with the NCS came up, which basically was because I was part of the NCS program when I was like 16, 17, which is actually where I met the Woodland Trust for the first time. There was like a class about the Young People's Forest. So it's all like circular. But I had an email saying they're doing this new program, the UK Year of Service, which is like 6 to 9 months where you will be placed in an organization to like develop skills, and you will be helping the community in a way. So I was going to apply to that, but what happened was my then line manager, Emily Moore, actually reached out to me because I was already part of the youth forum, and she said there's this exciting opportunity and you could actually work with us through your gap year. So I wanted to do that anyway. I knew it'd be hard I couldn't get like a job there, so I was going to like volunteer with them throughout anyways, whilst maybe like working or doing other stuff through my gap year. So this was like really ideal, and she basically said we can get you working here for 9 months. So I did like a backwards secondment, if that makes sense. But yeah, no, it was awesome. So then it all kind of fell into place, and I had a 9-month placement at the Woodland Trust.
Oh, that's cool. So it sounds like your connections with the Woodland Trust were really, really already useful. And then did you connect with the NCS? Was that through school?
So yes, NCS, they came into our secondary school just to like advertise the summer program. And I had already heard of it because my older sister went and loved it. So I was really excited and looking forward to it anyway. So when they came with that, I was like, definitely agree to do that.
So it was a great combination of the two things that you already had some experience of. You start your placement. What sort of things did you then get up to on your placement year?
Okay, there was a lot. So just doing that, I did a LinkedIn post trying to give the highlights. That took me like 2 weeks to figure out what I wanted to put in there, because there was actually so much I got exposed through in those 9 months. I want to say one of the biggest things was the amount of opportunities I got to do public speaking in different variations. There was also, okay, so the forest is focused on 10 to 20-year-olds. So we have key groups in there. So you already know about the Young Volunteers and the Youth Forum, but we got a newer group for 10 to 13-year-olds, which is the Junior Rangers. So staffing those activities was one of the main things I also did. So now I wasn't a student volunteer, not a student volunteer, sorry, a young volunteer. I was now actually the staff that was on teaching what they were going to do that week. So there was a lot of youth delivery. I also took management on my own projects. So we had the Orchard of Hope, which is my biggest project, and that originated in the Youth Forum. And that is a COVID memorial orchard. And after that idea, it actually got given to me as a project assistant to then develop and plan and actually start ordering the trees and like start planning how it's going to look on site. And I've had other projects checking like wildlife on site with trail cams and designing some areas. So I had a warden legacy area, so designing areas. So yeah, like absolutely crazy about.
Okay, so lots of different activities that you got involved with. Could you perhaps give us a bit of a vision of what the site looked like perhaps at the start, and whether it changed over the time that you were there? When we say Mead, what is it? What is there already?
So when I first started with the Woodland Trust, so when I was a volunteer, I remember planting 18 trees for my 18th birthday, and that was in phase 2. So all together on site, we've planted just over 250,000 trees. And when I first started, we were in the phase 2 of that. So this year we finished phase 3. So each phase was like another planting year. So I'd like to say I've been there for the later half of it, and since then we've obviously not just planting trees, but we've put in the Orchard of Hope, we've put in the Water Legacy, we finalized the features that young people have drawn up and won in competitions to then what they're going to look like on site. So that was part of the Youth Forum. We finalized which features are going to actually go onto the site. So this year we're hopefully going to get a life-sized mushroom stool, which is going to be like seating on site. And it's just grown as a site. Like you can tell, like more wildlife have actually come on the site. So this year and last year, the amount of skylarks, which is actually on the red endangered list on the RSPB, incredible amount of skylarks on site, and it's just been beautiful to see because you don't see that everywhere, and it's like it's really special to the site. And you I've been able to see the difference of how much it's grown. Obviously being there so often, it's been incredible.
So, I mean, it is incredible that you've been able to see a difference when we think of woodlands, that they take a long time to plant and grow, don't they? So the fact that you're already seeing differences from having planted those trees is quite amazing, an experience for you. In terms of the Woodland Trust itself, then, were you already familiar with what their ethos is? Could you explain to someone what the Woodland Trust does?
Yeah, I'd say I'm pretty familiar with their values, that they'd like to make the UK a wildlife haven and a woodland haven for both animals and humans alike. Their values of like creating and sustaining and protecting our woodlands as is, and just every year how they carry on enthusiastically to that goal of making, increasing tree cover, but also protecting our older trees that sometimes get forgotten because it's so exciting to obviously create new woodland, but it's so important to then also protect our older woodland because we can't reap the benefits if both aren't being managed. So yeah, I
For
definitely
sure.
right now, I have a much more in-depth knowledge of the Woodland Trust and what they value.
Excellent. And in terms of mead itself, were there any trees on site before this mass planting began? Do you know?
Yes, actually. So, you mentioned something earlier about how long people think trees take to grow, but it's incredible because so you already know how it was an open cast coal mine before it became a woodland. So when you're walking around there, you would not be able to tell because it's so rich in everything that it has now. But once the coal mine actually like was closed and stopped, they planted like some trees, like as once they first finished, they planted some trees, and they're actually about like 12 years old. And how tall they are, you wouldn't imagine they're only 12-year-old. Like you walk past them and you ask like, oh guys, how old do you think these are? And they seem surprised that it's 12-year-old. And I mean, I'd be surprised because you wouldn't think a tree grows that fast, but when you're walking around site, you actually see these trees growing. Like, wow, that I planted that last year, and wow, it's really like a meter high. So no, it's absolutely awesome. So yeah, that was planted before the Woodland Trust acquired it. We've also got some more veteran trees dotted across site, and it's actually crazy because apparently when the coal mining was being done, they left the veteran trees, so they were apparently just on really tall blocks of the ground, which probably was incredible to look at and quite weird, but you wouldn't be able to tell if you walk around them now. It just looks like an old tree, but obviously that has seen the coal mining and has survived that and was left alone, and then once it was all put back, they've continued to grow.
Oh, that's a really nice visual of seeing this very old tree suddenly become surrounded by new trees. Excellent. In terms of tree planting has hit the news quite a lot over the last 2 or 3 years in terms of being a very positive thing for the environment, and people think of it as in such a positive way. But it's not just about sticking any tree anywhere, is it? How did the site at Mead, for instance, how was it decided what trees would go where?
So obviously the Wooden Trust only plant native trees. So it's a selection of native trees. I believe it's to do, I'm not entirely sure how it's selected, but I believe it is to do with what's growing at the moment. Maybe this, I assume a lot of like testing happens of the soil and what would survive there. and what conditions it's going to grow. All of that goes into play once like the selection is then decided, but then you have like a whole selection that goes in. Silver birch is one of the main ones that have gone into our site only because it grows quite fast. And it when so you know the 12-year-old trees I mentioned a while ago, you have a couple of oaks, but you have like silver birches as well. And what that does is it protects the oaks whilst they're growing. So when they're old enough, they actually can be thinned out, so the oaks can then like grow out and grow bigger, which is quite cool. But yeah, there's a whole selection, and they differ by site and obviously region and area.
And have you got good at deciphering different types of tree as a result of your work?
You know what? I actually have, and I get really excited because you're taking a walk around this woodland, and I'm like, oh, is this? And the site manager Chris, he'd say, yeah, you're getting really good. And it's crazy because even when all the leaves fall off, and before you just walk past like, oh, that's a tree, but it's crazy because you can actually tell what trees what. I mean, is it? I mean, granted, it's much harder when it like the leaves fall off, but yeah, like the buds and like the way the twigs grow. And but I mean it's easy in the summer. Like right now I'm having the time of my life walking around like, oh, that's a sycamore, oh wait, that's a oak, it's awesome.
And do you find because of that, I mean, your enthusiasm is amazing. I love it. But do you find when you're not at Mead, you're elsewhere, and you come across a tree, you instantly you zone in on it that perhaps you wouldn't have done having not had this experience?
100%. It's crazy because there's so much to learn about everything around you, and you only get to know that when you meet experts in the field. So because I've been surrounded by like tree and wildlife and like environmental enthusiasts for the last year or two. Yeah, I get really excited when I'm walking past a tree, like, oh, I know what tree that is, guys. Like, I do 100%. I take much more, I do heed to what I'm going past and stuff a lot more now.
And at Mead, it is the young people's forest. What was the reason for it to be given that name? And to sort of, it gives me the impression that there is an inclusion of, or an encouragement of the youth to get involved in the local area. What was that? Do you know what the messaging behind that was? Why it's become the young people's forest?
I feel like I should definitely know more about this, but I know it came about because it's part of the I Will social action campaign dedicated to like youth action. And several people got their heads together and thought, you know what, having a specific site dedicated to young people, the location is ideal between like Nottingham and Derby. This site specifically for young people to use their voice and what they want woodlands to be. Because if you think about it, that's not, when you're going for a walk in the woodlands, it's not, you wouldn't, the audience you have in mind are not young people. So to change that narrative, to change actually young people are the next generation, and this is so important, having this site specifically for them and what they want to make it means that it's like it's giving us a chance to own up to it. Does that make sense? Like having this
Yes.
area specifically for our voice.
And has that meant having young people's opinions and voices heard in the development of this forest and this woodland? Has it meant that it does look different to say it would have done if a lot of middle-aged people had got together?
I believe so the activities we have right now, like so we had an event, we had Mead Fest, we've had the colour run, we're obviously having all of these new features put in, we're gonna have like a viewing platform put in, just so I mean, yes, right now maybe it doesn't look that much different, but like the activities we host on site, the young people we have, like the groups we have who are actually making these changes, like we for the Jubilee weekend, we had the junior rangers make a huge Jubilee flag, and that's going to go on site. The I Will groves, the young people are designing. So yeah, so when the trees start to grow and more features get to be put in, 100% it'll be noticeable.
Excellent. And you mentioned Mead Fest there. Obviously, it was a festival. What was it about? How did you draw people in? And did it do what you hoped it would do?
Okay, so the youth forum wanted to do like we were given a task to do an event to draw people into the site, to make the site more known to people, because it's like quite tucked away. It's right next to Shipley Country Park, which people are used to going to, but going to the Young People's Forest is just like slightly tucked away to get people inside and really enjoy the area. And also it's on the lead up to, I believe it's called the Great Big Green Week. So right, the follow up to, no, not the follow up, sorry, like the build up to COP26. It was also about that, and spreading awareness about that. But the day was basically to, like I said, get people here, and it was we had, and the color run was part of that. So it was just like something fun. The color run like did like a loop around the Young People's Forest, again bringing awareness, but also you get like pelted with color. Like how cool is that? But it was just a fun day. So we obviously, to get young people, we had different like musicians on. We had falconry, we had a climbing wall, we had archery, just like things to like draw people in. And as the pilot run, obviously it was the first time we ever did it. It was just an idea. It went really well, and people really enjoyed it. So again, we're doing it again this year, and it's going to be bigger and better, and I cannot wait to go. I cannot wait.
Excellent. And have you found, are you aware that numbers of people visiting the woodland have increased as a result of doing these sorts of events?
I mean, it's not like I've been there enough to, and like I've paid enough attention to like who's coming, who's going, but I'd hope so. I would think that spreading the awareness of this area, this beautiful site being here, and obviously people coming to planting days, they've already been there, they planted trees, that means something to them, and it's like over time it's obviously drawn more people in.
And do you know how many sorts of numbers there are of people actually coming to plant the trees that have been involved with that process?
Ooh, I feel like that would be a really cool statistic to have. I know there is a banner up saying up to now we've had so and so many thousands of young people involved, which is awesome to see. But it's a lot because we've obviously planted over 250,000 trees. Absolutely amazing. But no, a phenomenal amount. Obviously, it was fun to see like familiar faces coming every planting day. But no, we drew new people in every time, and different classes, and university students, and just awesome. So it's a big number. I know that.
Yeah, and I can imagine if you have been involved in planting a tree there, it's a community experience, and it's, as you say, you're connecting with nature. I imagine that is something that's lasting, and people perhaps might want to visit their tree that they planted. So it's a really good way of drawing people back, I imagine.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the ethos that's created at a planting event, it's so unique and it's so beautiful, because when I go around talking to these people, they're here purely because they want to do something good for the environment. They want to, get outside and meet other people. And it's genuinely, if you get the chance to go to a planting event, 100% recommend it.
And do you have to sort of fend people off? Because, I mean, are there only so many people that you can have planting trees? How does it work in terms of numbers?
I feel like we we do try to get everyone who wants to get involved, so it does get really hectic on planting days, but it is really worth it at the end. And for most of our planting events, it was as many trees as you wanted to plant. Like there wasn't a limit on it. So no, it's just absolutely awesome.
You did mention earlier that you planted 18 trees on your 18th birthday, which is a really nice way of remembering your 18th. Do you go back to where you've planted them? Do you know where your trees are?
I know vaguely where they are, and yeah, they've shot up. It's crazy to think that I planted that about 1.5 years ago. But now I know where vaguely they are, and it is quite a special walking past that. And I like pointing out the fact that, I celebrated not to brag, guys, but I planted 18 trees for my 18th birthday.
That is a really nice thing to share with other people that may not have shared their 18th in a similar sort of way. So that's a really nice story. You obviously gained a lot of skills through doing this experience as well. What have been the sort of standout moments for you?
Again, I bring up public speaking a lot because although I tend to be quite bubbly, but public speaking is really scary. So I think one of my most favorite highlights was I did a speech on behalf of the Woodland Trust at the Nottingham COP26 march, when the whole marches were happening across the country for it. And I really, really enjoyed that because I was nervous before then. But once I delivered that speech, it felt so good. And that was definitely a key moment I think about when I think about the placement. But also just meeting all these new different people. And I believe throughout the 9 months, I've talked to so many different people. Like I've grown as a communicator. So yeah, it's a lot of building different skills.
And the connections that you've made, have they made you think about in terms of your future? You've become a community where you care about the environment or woodlands particularly. What joins you within that community, that the people that you've met?
They all want a better future. They're all working towards that goal. Yeah, I've met incredible people, both like public and the staff alike, and different things you could do. Like you wouldn't think you could get a career in like so and so, but obviously being in part of this placement, I've been exposed to all of these different career paths, which is amazing to see because it's like wow, there's so much more out there.
You seem very positive, in spite perhaps of quite difficult environmental situations that we face. Do you ever get worried by the enormity of the challenge on the environmental issues that currently face us?
Eco anxiety is obviously a huge thing about amongst young people because it's like what there's only so much we feel we can do without the people in power taking charge. But I know there's so many people fighting for the good change, but again is daunting. It's because it's like if the people like the government aren't taking action, they're not doing what they're saying they're doing, or they're not thinking it's as serious as it is. It's scary because you know what, it's us it's gonna fall on to then fix it, and we're trying to fix it, but it only goes so far. So obviously it's good. I try to be positive, but it does get daunting at times.
What are your hopes then on the back of these experiences and managing this sort of enormity of the future? Where do you hope your next steps will be?
So with this experience, I've obviously been exposed to more of the like climate issues. I see, like I hope going forward. So I'm going to university to study zoology this September. Exciting. But I hope what this experience has done for me is I'll be much more vocal about issues. Yeah, and maybe take more charge with these issues. Yeah.
So it sounds like the experience has given you numbers of a variety of different skills, but also the sort of drive. You sound like the kind of person that you had your eye on the prize already. Zoology was your ambition, and you're striving towards it without any hesitation. But it's if it gives you the additional confidence to share your voice and connect with like-minded people, that sounds like a really positive thing that it's given you.
100%.
So what university are you hoping to go to, or has that already been sorted? Do you know where you're going?
Yeah, so you know how I said I applied like a year ago and then it
Yes.
actually got deferred? So luckily I didn't have to do the whole personal statement, all of that extra stress. That was the stress I did when I did my A levels, there was a lot of stress. But I'm going to Swansea University in Wales. Yeah, and to study zoology with an industry year.
And have you looked in the Woodland Trust magazine to work out where the nearest woodlands are?
You know what? It's not funny because I actually have. Like, I actually was on this meeting about this new site they were developing, and I heard Swansea as part of it. So I searched it up, and apparently it's a 30-minute drive, I believe, or something, to the site, and you can actually see the university from the site. So I've already messaged the site manager saying, I'd love to get involved with any opportunities, and just help out. So yeah, definitely, I'm definitely going to carry on volunteering for the Woodland Trust.
Oh, that's great! It's great that you've got this connection to trees and the Woodland Trust, and that's going to go on to the future. I bet the Derbyshire team are going to miss you for sure. So, as we come to a closing couple of questions, Sabaha, what would you hope that in 2050 the outlook for woodlands would look like in the UK? Have you got a vision of what that might be?
2050. I hope our tree cover has increased, but I also hope the veteran trees are being protected, because I believe right now some of the veteran trees aren't actually legally protected. So I hope the government do step up and start, taking proper actions. But yeah, no, I hope we've increased our tree cover.
Does it feel like, I mean, it's 30, well, it's less than 30 years. For you as a young person, does it feel quite difficult to imagine 30 years in the future?
Yeah, like I don't really know how to answer that question, because I've not lived 30 years yet. So thinking that far ahead, I'm not entirely sure, no.
Yeah, no, that's a good answer. Absolutely fine. Through your experience with this placement and your previous volunteering, has it altered other things that you might do, like in the home? Is it, or do you talk to your family about the sorts of environmental and the nature-based solutions that you're involved with them? And has it changed any sort of the dynamic within your family and friends?
I believe so, because obviously having all of this new information means that me as a person, I operate differently. So, I mean, if something comes up, I'm obviously thinking of the sustainable side and, helping the wildlife, helping the trees. Um, so yeah, definitely translated in the way I do things day to day, and how I, if my friends were to say, if they came up with a problem or something, yeah.
And do your friends get it? Are they like-minded in their approach to nature and woodlands and what have you, or have you got a bit of a sell to do in terms of protecting them?
I wouldn't say they're as invested as me. I know, obviously, people do understand like woodlands help nature, but it's so much more than that. So obviously, talking to me, like I get quite passionate. So no, I mean, the people around me don't really hold the same passion. But I'm always there to tell them about it, so it's okay.
Well, it's been super talking to you, Sabaha, and I think your enthusiasm and your passion with whoever you're with at the time, you can't not enjoy being in your company for that alone.
Oh,
So
thank you so much.
thank you for sharing your experiences, and very much best of luck in Swansea. I'm sure you're going to have a fabulous time.
Thank you so much.
You're
Thank you
most
so much. It's
welcome.
been amazing talking to you.
What a delight it was to chat with Sabaha. Her enthusiasm when talking about her woodland experiences was infectious, and it seems her placement has strengthened her passion for nature, extended her knowledge and developed her interpersonal skills. Woodlands are so special, and it was lovely to hear how the landscape at Mead has been transformed through young people for young people. We need everyone to love nature to ensure it's adequately protected. You can find out more about the Woodland Trust through the links in the show notes. I'd like to thank Andy Shaw for audio editing, Jeremy Jones for providing the music, and to you, of course, for listening. Don't forget you can subscribe to get automatic access to each new episode. And it would be lovely if you could rate, review and share the podcast too. It really helps. Until next time, bye for now.